in all of college baseball. What do you think are some common characteristics for all of the players that eventually come into play in the SEC? Like, what do they need to possess?
I think determination, grit, and dedication. I think it's like playing in the big leagues. It's like playing pro baseball. It's like anything that's challenging. You got to find a way to fight through it. We've had some talented kids, but the people that are just determined to fight through it, you know how it is when you're playing. You don't wake up every day excited. You got to find the excitement. There's days you're going to be beat up. There's days you're going to be exhausted. There's days you're not going to want to do it. You got to find your why.
We're joined by the recruiting coordinator at Georgia, Brock Bennett. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I know for the families and the players listening, I want to jump into kind of like the first thing on their mind, which is you obviously not only are a recruiting coordinator, but you're a recruiting coordinator at one of the best programs in the SEC, if not the entire country. From your perspective, obviously you played, right? You played at Alabama. You got drafted. You played, was it the Giants?
Yeah.
My boy Dylan, he appreciates that.
There we go.
When you talk to families, like how much of your perspective do you believe comes from your time as a player, your time as a player in college? Like, do you truly feel like, hey man, I've been in your shoes. Like I know what this is like. And so let me kind of like help you through this. Is that an approach you take?
Yeah, I think so. I think I have a unique experience just because I've kind of been at all levels. I've coached at junior college, coached travel ball, coached in the Sun Belt.
Oh, that's right.
I coached for Team Elite back in the day. Yeah, while I was doing some junior college stuff. So, having that perspective really helps me see what these kids were kind of going through on the ground floor level, because I've been the guy that's trying to get some colleges on them or know what they need to do to get to the next level or know some of the hardships that they're going for. So I feel like I have a unique perspective where I can relate a little bit to that and see kind of what each kid's looking for or, which way to push them or whatever. Because again, like you said, not everyone's going to go to Georgia or in our league, but there's a fit for everyone.
What's funny is I noticed as, we kind of go on here and we communicate with different coaches and whatnot, everybody in your conference calls it a league. And I don't know why I've always called it a conference. Is that a thing?
I don't know. Yeah, it's just kind of what we say, I guess.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about it. So you just said it. Yeah, our league. We act like it's our league, but it's a game of baseball. And Coach Johnson does a good job of just saying, "Hey, man, have fun. You're playing a kid's game. No matter where you go."
For sure.
Because again, it's kind of like I said, you put it on a different logo, but you're the same coach. You evolve as you go, but you just love the game of baseball, whether you're playing or coaching. That's why we get in this business to help kids and help families.
And so you were a catcher?
Yep.
Okay, so taking that position, I've always looked at that position as, you're essentially like the quarterback on the baseball field. Do you feel like having played that position for so long that provided you with maybe a different perspective than maybe just another kid who was just a pitcher, just a PO, or maybe was even an outfielder or a first baseman? Like, I feel like a catcher, you have to have a dynamic personality. Have you recognized that that's like something that's benefited you in the role that you're currently in?
Yeah, I think so. I think being a catcher, obviously you see everything kind of like quarterback on football, but also I went through a couple of coaching changes while I was playing at Alabama, worked for 6 different head coaches, kind of seeing everything from that lens. But the playing career, being the catcher, you're obviously in the bullpen, so you see the pitching side of stuff. You're obviously hitting, so you see the hitting side of stuff.
Yep.
I feel like you get to see all kind of avenues of the game. You get to learn, and I didn't really play that much for the first couple of years at Alabama, so I really sat back and took it all in. I was behind Alex Avila, who obviously had a good big league career.
Hey, if you got to be behind somebody, though, it's at least nice that this guy got to the big leagues and like, all right, he's a legit dude.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you're sitting on the bench, I just sit over there and try and take everything in, from catching bullpens to late work, early work, things like that, nutrition, like you already talked about.
Yeah, I love that. If you had to describe the SEC, because I do believe, as a lot of these families would probably attest to, the SEC is one of those, it is the premier league, to use your terms, in all of college baseball. What do you think are some like common characteristics for all of the players that eventually come into play in the SEC? Like, what do they need to possess?
I think determination, grit, and dedication. I think one of the things is it's like playing in the big leagues. It's like playing pro baseball. It's like anything that's challenging. You got to find a way to fight through it. Obviously we've had some talented kids, but we had Charlie Condon, who had the red shirt, and things didn't go his way, right or wrong, but he fought through it and became a better guy on the end of it.
Say so.
Yeah.
It worked out for him.
Yeah, exactly. So, the people that are just determined to fight through it, because again, you know how it is when you're playing, you don't wake up every day excited. You got to
Yeah.
find the excitement. There's days you're going to be beat up. There's days you're going to be exhausted. There's days you're not going to want to do it. And you gotta find your why.
What what would be a parallel as you think about the SEC as far as talent level? Like, would it be equivalent to, in your opinion, having played pro ball, like equivalent to high A, double A? Because I do believe it's like you can't compare, even though it's college baseball, the level of talent in the SEC. I mean, it is good. Obviously, when you go to double A in pro ball, it's like, so I know it's not a perfect parallel, but just as far as like the best of the best in your league, when you compare to, all those guys who are winning all these awards that we all hear about every single year, it's like these guys eventually are going to be top picks, right? They're going to be the guys that eventually be these superstars in the big league. So what would be, I guess, the closest parallel you think as far as the level?
A lot of people do say double A, like you said. I think that's a good comp. I think, to your point, maybe double A, at the bottom.
Yeah,
no
there's probably
offense, no
more.
offense to
There's
our
more.
guys.
Yeah, there's more polish in double A than I'd say the SEC. But like, as far as like potential,
yeah, and I'd say it'd be double A just because at the college level there's so much pressure to win, right? Whereas in pro ball it's kind of all about you. What can I do? Especially in the minor leagues, right? How can you advance and what are you working on, right? Where in our game, obviously you're going to develop. You're going to work on your craft, but when it comes down to it, it's all about wins.
Yeah, I'm gonna get criticized for saying this, but I just bear with me. I feel like if you had to compare it to like these organizations in professional baseball, the SEC is like, there's a difference between playing in New York for the Yankees or in Boston for the Red Sox or LA for the Dodgers, Chicago for the Cubs. There's a difference between those organizations and needing to excel when all of the pressure is on, when all of the eyeballs are on, and like the media, right? All the media is involved. To be a good player in those cities and those environments, it's a different level than being on the Cleveland Guardians. And that's no offense to the Guardians. It's just the dynamic of like the expectation, I think. And so that is something that I think, as I personally, deal with a bunch of these families, making sure that if a kid is actually committed to going to an SEC program, this isn't a walk in the park. This is not just, it's just the next step up. It's like, no, there is a heightened level of focus that needs to be placed on your preparation. You certainly have to do the little things well. Like if you're a guy who needs to be reminded to wake up in the morning, right? Like those aren't lessons that you're going to necessarily, you have to have already learned that lesson by the time you go play with any one of these SEC programs. So, and I guess more than anything, that's almost a compliment to your guys' league because, again, I think it's the one that most players and parents, when they think of their son playing college baseball, I think they envision them at a big program like that. Not to mention a trend that I've seen, being a guy from California, now living on the East Coast, but being a guy from California originally, if you go back 20 years ago, you're not pulling kids from Southern California and going to a lot of these places and in even Georgia on some level, right? Like that wasn't common. But now, I mean, the trend is totally reversed. And now kids, again, thinking about college baseball, it's like, well, there's no other place I would want to play. It's almost been what SEC football is. It's almost that way for, if not more than, in baseball now. So, it's certainly a unique thing.
Yeah, I think it's trended that way. To your point, I think they're always saying they're not a couple years behind football, but you follow football, right? And I think that's what's happening, right? I think the money, the social media, the TV stuff has really changed the game a little bit, and being nationally televised and everything like that. Just all eyes are on you, the pressure, things like that. And back to your points, like if you have to be reminded to wake up, those guys get weeded out, and it's just not really, to your point, what's going on at our level, right? You're already kind of past that stuff.
Yeah, when I think of one of the first things I feel like with legit college programs now, the thing that most players are going to see firsthand, and again, especially in your guys' league, is you're going to have to compete like immediately. There is no, back in the day when we were growing up, I mean, I'm older than you, but when we were growing up, it's like you're picking a college and you're going there for the next 3 years. And the whole idea is I'm going to probably not play much as a freshman. I'm going to learn the ropes, get acclimated. learn the system, learn how it's different. I'm gonna wait my turn. I'm gonna bide my time. Then the second year, it's like, okay, now's my time to show these guys that I'm the guy. And then obviously your junior year is your draft year, and then we'll see you later. Or now it's like, no. You're coming in, and the expectation is so high that you need to come in and compete. And if you do, there's opportunity. But this isn't like, oh yeah, just sit back and like it'll just happen. Like you've got to be motivated, ready to go from day one. Do you think as you, like we're at the area codes, right? So you're obviously here, you're going to look at some players. You have players that I'm sure are here. You have guys that you're going to be looking at that haven't yet committed. As you look at these players, how much of your evaluation is on that stuff? Like the maturity level? Does he check those boxes? Or do you deal with that stuff later? And are you more focused on like the tools first?
Yeah, that's a good question. And back to your point, it's kind of funny because I joke, if I was 20 years younger, I wouldn't have been able to play college baseball pretty much because I was that walk-on that kind of waited my turn and then ended up getting a chance. And nowadays, to your point, it's like we tell our kids all the time, you got to add value. You got to come in ready to play. Whether you're a freshman or senior, we don't care the age of the kid. You got to be ready to produce, right? And that's kind of what our league's about. But while you're in an event like this, I think you're taking everything in, right? Obviously, there's got to be a certain talent level that the kid has, but you're watching everything they do on and off the field. You're watching, but you are mainly evaluating that talent of how it fits kind of in your system.
Yeah, if the kid's not like talent, physically gifted, like whether he's mature or not, it's like, all right, he's not an SEC caliber player. So that is something that almost sounds like you're almost doing both in a sense.
Yeah, I think you try and do both, right? I think the off the field stuff is kind of harder. Obviously, that's a little bit more maybe over the phone when you get them on campus, things like that. But while you're out here, you're just watching how they're interacting with their teammates and what they can do in the game.
Do you? How often are you talking to like pro scouts as far as how they're evaluating, figuring out like we should be doing the same stuff? Because you obviously the makeup is a big piece. How scouts are actually going to like watch a game, what they're paying attention to. Is that stuff that you guys
do quite a bit. Obviously, all of our area scouts I'm really tight with. And then obviously with Coach Johnson being in the big leagues for 4 years, he's close with a lot of cross-checkers. We, we're always evaluating how we're doing it, how we're evaluating the players, how we're evaluating anything we're doing on the coaching side or the recruiting side, right? We want to be the first of the party, right? It's kind of what we say. And we don't want to be following someone else's lead. We kind of want to invent our own stuff. And we get opinions from everyone, especially the pro scouts.
I guess talk a little bit about your role as a recruiting coordinator. Because I think a lot of times people don't quite grasp all the responsibilities that you guys have. You're obviously in many cases, not every case, but in many cases, kind of the first point of contact with a lot of the players. Like sometimes obviously the head guy is eventually at these events and reaches out and whatever. But like, what does your role entail?
Yeah, I think obviously we have a great staff, so we all kind of have hands in it, but identifying the players, right? I think it's coming back with a list and then letting everyone, Coach Johnson or Coach Coggin or Coach Ammo kind of evaluate the hitters and pitchers on their own. And then we filter through that list kind of that way, if that makes sense. So kind of grabbing the whole database and then filtering who we think might be a fit, things like that. And then filtering in the guys that, hey, then we make a priority list. Like these are the top kind of targets. And then go from there. Hey, this will be a good fit here. Hey, I really like this about this guy. And then evaluate a little more on that piece through video and things like that.
And do you bring up video, the parents that they have their son's Instagram account or whatever, and they're like managing it and they're posting video for them or they're getting video of them. Do you rely on, let's just say, the video that the player's providing, or is that more video that you guys are getting? Because I think the reason I'm asking the question is a lot of parents, and this is probably more for like the younger generation, where they're really trying to kind of build a database to provide recruiting coordinators and different individuals in this business looks, right? Like, I think they think, oh, well, they don't know about my son yet, so let me do things to show them that he's somebody that I should pay attention to. So what video are you referring to?
Yeah, I think so. I think we use it all, right? But I think with social media nowadays, like the parents can be a big help to their kid. There's times on social media where we all scroll through Twitter. You see a swing that looks pretty good from a side angle maybe, and then you go research the kid a little bit, or where if they hadn't taken that video, maybe I don't even, yeah, exactly. So I definitely we all go through Twitter or Instagram or anything. And if a swing stands out, if you see something that kind of sticks out, you'll do a double take and research a little more. Obviously, it's not the end all be all, but it might catch your eye. And then if the guy is on our list already and there's more video to look at, whether they posted it or it's on our apps or anything like that, we're looking at pretty much anything and everything we can get our hands on.
Yeah, for everybody listening too, I think the thing that you have to kind of sit back and realize, instead of making all of this so overwhelming, because I think a lot of times they do get overwhelmed, these parents, what's important is think about it more like commonsensically, right? Like, obviously you guys, and you've said it now a couple times, you want information. Like, information is valuable, right? There's good information, there's bad information, but you guys would be really short-sighted if you're not paying attention to, and I'm gonna mention the rankings. Not that you're saying, oh, well, this kid's ranked 5th, so this means he's the 5th best player. It's more like, oh, he's on the ranking list. Like, if I don't know him, I need to like get my eyes on him. And if someone writes a report, let's just say with Perfect Game, Baseball America, any one of these other publications or services, yeah, it's like it's an opinion. So I would be stupid not to evaluate this information. I guess let's take a step back a little bit. This is more a general question. When you guys are going through putting your target list together, I have to imagine, because you don't know before reaching out to them, like, is this a guy who's going to have interest in our program? Is this a guy who'd rather be, if it's a West Coast kid, does he want to be close to home? Is he somebody who wants to get away from home? How much of the target is, this is a need we have that we need to fill, right? We're short on middle infielders, right? So let's target middle infielders. Or is it like, look, because we don't know how things are going to shake out with the draft, with, other guys we're recruiting, is it more broad? Like, we need to, I would assume there's probably like levels to the reaching out, but do you cast more of a wider net and then kind of like dwindle it down as you get to know these people?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way to put it. Cast the wide net and then go from there. But as you know, like, there's premium positions that you can always use, right? And premium positions can always move around a little bit more. The thing you don't want to get stuck with is, I was a catcher, you don't want to get stuck with five catchers on a 34-man roster, right? So that does play a factor in it. But I think you cast the wide net, especially with the new recruiting rules, right? With all the different rankings, you haven't really, maybe you're just making your list, you're taking everyone's opinion in, and then you're going in and going, okay, everyone values something different. And we know what we value. And then we pick apart those lists, create our own list, and see what kind of matches up, and then see what we want to go after from there.
So describe, if you could, because this I think would be helpful, as much as you feel comfortable talking about it. Like, what is a Bulldog? Like, what is a Bulldog type player? Is it, power arms? Like, you guys obviously like set, I don't know how many records the last couple of years with the home runs hit. Like,
yeah.
Define what a Bulldog is.
Yeah,
like today.
Yeah.
With the new staff.
It's funny you ask, because someone used to tell me everyone wants to switch hitting shortstop that runs a 6'4", right? But that's the first rounder that doesn't show up, right? I think at different positions we're looking for different dynamics. But to answer your question, I mean, we led the nation in homers last year, so we're definitely looking for power. I think having power bats is kind of the name of the game now, right? So I think, and just with our ballpark, it's kind of something that we hone in on. And to your point, we look for power arms just because of our ballpark as well, right? It's the strikeouts a premium, right? And Coach Johnson does such a good job of teaching the swing and miss and punching guys out, that's what we're looking on, for power on both sides of the ball. Now, that doesn't mean, I was the small little guy that could run. That doesn't mean we're not going to get those guys too, right? Those guys fill a need and they're going to be part of the team and things like that. But for the most part, if you were to look at an overall landscape, it'd be power on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and you guys have an interesting dynamic too, because you bring up Coach Johnson. Obviously, for everybody watching, Wes Johnson, head baseball coach at Georgia, was the pitching coach for the Minnesota Twins in the big leagues. Before, I guess after that, went to LSU, was the pitching coach at LSU. Before getting the job, obviously the head job at Georgia. But he's been around college for a long time. He obviously was at Arkansas for a period of time. I think Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And so what you'll see, for everybody listening, is a lot of the programs in college, guys do move around. And so, not every coach, like, the stories about, like Graham over at Rice, like he was there for 40, 50 years or whatever it was, like that's not really common. So you do get a lot of these guys with a pretty vast and like dynamic resume when it comes to even like the development piece, right? Because I think about Wes, and there's obviously, just when you talk about pitchers, like when you coach at the big league level, what that provides you is a view into really how it works up there, what works, what doesn't work. I think everybody, if they had to kind of like analyze professional baseball and college baseball, it's, there's different levels, obviously. College is above high school, pro ball is above college. But interestingly, the way that the game is set up is, speaking about the SEC, and again, being like equivalent to AA, it's like there are parts of minor league baseball, obviously, that are going to be below the levels of Georgia. And so in the SEC, it's like, if I'm a player, like, and I had the tools to play in the SEC, I think one of the things that I would really analyze and try to identify is, like, number one, what are my strengths? How can I make those better? Like, what's the potential ceiling? But more importantly, like, what are the weaknesses? And then who are the people at these programs that I feel like have done, not just could do, but like have done a really good job of developing, and like identify that program. And that obviously helps, find the right fit. So I think a lot of families, when they go through that initial, hey, we're talking to like, 15 schools on August 1 of our junior year, it can get super overwhelming. And naturally, when you hear about these stories of kids taking 8 visits to these programs, it's like, how do you even start whittling down? Like, is this the right program? Is that the right program? Like, have you guys, I mean, I'm assuming you talk about it a lot, but like how big of a challenge is that for you guys when you do have a kid come take a visit and he's going to 7 other places?
Yeah, I think it plays a big factor in it, right? And for the parents out there, I mean, this could be at any level, right? I think you always run into it. It's like, okay, if you're going to take 5 to 10 visits with our peers, like, how do we know you have a real interest here? How do we know you don't just want to come and, kind of hang out, maybe see a football game or just see the campus, something like that? Like, how do we do our homework on the front end to make sure, hey, no, it's a real possibility. If you have a really good time here, you like how we're developing guys, it feels like home, that you have a real opportunity for us to get a yes, And I think it's kind of hard, right? Because from the kids' perspective, they're kind of trying to do the same thing, right? And they might not know, they might honestly want to take 5+ visits and get a feel for everything. They don't know. They want to see what the campus is like. They want to get a feel in person and things like that. So it is kind of a tough thing there, because then you don't want to turn kids away and just go, well, no, if you're going to take that many visits, because what if they really did like it, right? Or what if they were talented enough or something like that?
What advice would you give to a family who's it's obviously, what is it, August 6th, August 1st just came through. They're a junior right now, and they're for the first time now talking to these schools. What advice would you give, as far, from your perspective as a college recruiting coordinator? What advice would be helpful for them to hear as far as things to do and also things not to do as you communicate with these colleges?
I think number one is just be honest, right? I think sometimes in the recruiting process, kids are afraid to tell you no. Like, kids are afraid to be like, you know what? Yeah, exactly, right? Or they're scared to tell you that they committed somewhere else. They're scared of these things. They think you're going to be mad, right? Or if you're the school they're like dreaming of going to, they're just going to give you all the answers that you think you want to hear, and you don't really find anything out about the kid, right? They might, hey, they've got their 5 questions that they wrote down before the phone call. They're sounding super robotic instead of just a casual conversation. I think just be yourself, right?
Yeah, like they're being coached almost.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like you're going to figure that out one way or another. So it's better to figure out sooner. And for me, there's no hard feelings, right? Hey, man, go on your way, right? I think sometimes we get so caught up in, hey, I want to play at X school, but there's only so many spots at that school. I could want to coach at, you name the school, but A, they have a head coach. B, he might be there for who knows how long, and I might not be the fit with AD or whatever it is, right? And I think from a player perspective, just taking the pressure off, maybe from the parents, taking the pressure off of, oh, I want him to go to this school and this school only and play shortstop, right? Just being able to know, like, hey, I could still be the best player. I'm giving it my all, but that school might not be the right fit in this time frame. And maybe it was 5 years ago, but maybe it's not right now, you know?
That's one of the reasons why I do like the new rule with August 1 of the junior year, at least for the D1 and D2s. I think D3 is different. But yeah, I do appreciate it because we would hear constantly about these kids at, 7th, 8th grade committing to whether it was their hometown school or whatever. Like I've always dreamed of going to, name the place, and then they commit. And then sure enough, you look into the future, and I saw some stat one time. It was like 25% of the kids that commit, if they're, 13 years old, ever stick with that commitment, either because the player eventually realizes, oh, it's a different staff. This isn't, maybe I'm not going to play, or maybe there's something better out there for me. Or the reverse of that is the school or the coach committed you, and now you haven't continued to progress on a level that they were expecting. And so now naturally they're like, hey man, you should probably go somewhere else. You're not going to play here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
to your point earlier. It's so hard, especially in our league. This is my 13th year in the league, and you see all the coaches around the league. There's probably 10 plus of us that have moved around to a different school at some point in time, right? And a lot of the head coaches were assistants in the league, and that's what happens when you have some of the best coaches. They keep getting promoted the better you do, right? So I think it's kind of funny. Our entire staff is coached at other places in the league, and we've all ended up now obviously we're at Georgia, but you'd like to think in the next 5 years that one of the assistants on our staff gets a head job somewhere, right? So if you committed to somewhere 6 years prior, like one of those coaches might not be there, and maybe that was the coach you really loved, right? So I do think the new rules are helpful.
So obviously you're one of the coaches there. We've talked about Wes. Obviously Will Coggins, he was at Mississippi State. He was at Kentucky.
Yep.
And then he obviously was an agent at one point. What about some of the other guys that are there? Like where have they been?
So then Nick Amorati, who helps him with the hitting, he was at Kentucky with Will.
Okay.
And then he came over last year.
Ammo.
Yep. Ammo. He does a great job. He was I think Southern Miss and Northwestern State before that for a little stint.
Yeah.
And then our director of baseball operations, Cam Shepard, was actually the shortstop for my first year at Georgia. He won the Gold Glove in 2019. Didn't make an error in league play, so we're fortunate to have him. Yeah.
Oh man,
it's he's a young, awesome, energetic coach.
Yeah. And
then coach just hired Drew Finley as our player development guy,
nice.
Who was with him at LSU and was the pitching coach at Nicholls State last year.
Oh, so Finley was. I haven't met him, but Finley was at LSU and Nicholls State, you said?
Yep, this past year. He's been 1 year there, and the 3 previous, he was at LSU.
Nice.
And he was, I think, a third rounder with the Dodgers or Yankees out of high school.
Yeah, I know the name.
Yeah.
That's great. So we talked about, obviously, all right, these players needed to be honest.
Yep.
What else? What else
in
comes
the
to mind?
Recruiting process?
Yeah.
As far as just...
Is there anything else that comes to mind as far as like you would appreciate if they did this as well? And maybe there's not anything. Maybe like honesty is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then I guess the flip side of that is what shouldn't they do? Now, obviously it's be dishonest, but is there anything that you think... The reason why I bring this up is put yourself in a player's shoes and a parent's shoes, right? You were in that boat. I understand why a 17-year-old kid, 17 at the time, who's a junior, potentially younger, has a really hard time. Like I oftentimes think about what are other 16 and 17-year-old kids having to do at that age that aren't in this position, right? A lot of times they're not dealing with adults on this level. They, these are some of the hardest decisions they've ever had to make. And they're having to make this decision really trying to identify, in your guys' case, if they're considering Georgia, like you have the opportunity to go to a lot of fantastic programs. So I want to choose a school that is going to truly help me get to where I want to go.
Yeah.
I can see that being a hard thing. So like them not wanting to make a mistake, right? And oftentimes if the parent, and not, this isn't to belittle a parent or tell the parent they're not doing things the right way, but you can tell, I'm sure you do as well. Like you can tell when maybe a parent doesn't hold their son accountable to having the hard conversation, and instead maybe it's a text message. Like from my perspective, oftentimes I've had players who I've eventually worked with who they don't want to talk on the phone. It's really just text message. And the challenge that I have with that is so much of this business is all about relationships, and you really need to get to know the human. And so getting to know a 16-year-old kid where there's already this age gap is a challenge. But how are you supposed to do that when the kid isn't comfortable picking up the phone and actually just wanting to get to know you?
I think that is difficult, right? Trying to figure out how the kid communicates best, because there are some kids that still like talking on the phone. But to your point, in the Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram world that we live in, it's like guys would rather just shoot off text, and figuring out how to communicate with them through that the best way possible can be difficult at times, right? Because you don't know if they're giving you the truth right that way, right? Because they can always just kind of get an answer and then text you back, right? As opposed to not necessarily being on the spot, but calling them and getting it that way. I love the phone calls too, because you get a feel for the kid, right? Like hey coach, I'm about to go hit. Hey coach, I just got done working out, or this or that. Like you feel like you know the kid a little better, right?
Yeah. Do you guys? So I had a kid out of the draft this year who committed to a different SEC program, and he leading up to the draft decides to go to summer school at the school, right, that he's committed to. And this is obviously before the draft starts, and it's kind of like the first opportunity for the player to really feel like, hey, this is what it would feel like going to school here, or in the weight room, or talking to the trainer. Or do you guys find that valuable for kids that are incoming freshmen to get them into summer school, to truly give them a taste of what it's like? Because I think the reason why I liked it is for these pro scouts, for any kid who's being really considered in the draft and has an opportunity to go to the SEC. We're talking about like really a small percentage of guys, right? Like the best of the best. Those kids, oftentimes, they just spent the last year, they committed to the program, the college program, well before. They spent the last year just seeing scouts at their games. You guys are obviously communicating with them, but like it's all pro ball. Like pro ball's front and center in their mind. And so they can see what that looks like, really, because it's like they're dreaming about it. But college, it's like, well, where does college fit in all this? Well, if I don't get what I want, then I'll go to college. Instead of, well, do you understand what college is yet? Quite like you should if you were going to turn down money. That's one of the reasons why I think there's value in like the summer school piece. Have you guys found that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it gets them acclimated to the college experience too, right? Like they can start going to classes. They can see what the dorm life's like. They can hang out with other guys on the team. They can do some voluntary workouts at the field, and get to know some of either the guys coming in that have triggered student athlete status, or some of the players that are maybe there working out over the summer, things like that. Obviously, we can't be there for any of it, but for them to be able to be around some of their peers, right? To your point, it's like, I think sometimes when you do get draft, then you forget what college is like, right? And there's not necessarily a right or wrong for any particular kid, right? I think it's a case by case basis, but I think getting anyone to school sooner rather than later just helps them ease the process a little bit.
Yeah, make a more educated decision.
Yeah.
The thing for me is always, again, using your line earlier about what's, information is valuable to you. It should also be valuable to the player. Well, that information is this experience, right? Like seeing what the town is like.
Yeah.
Right. What's the energy around here?
Yeah. Because again, to your point, it's like you never really know until you're engulfed in it, right? And it's like just because your parents wanted you to go to a certain place, or just because you thought it was cool on TV, till you really get there and you're with the people every day, you really don't know if it was the right fit, right? And I think that's one of the things that people forget is it's a relationship business, like you said. And it's like, man, if you're miserable every day, like what's the point of it, right? You're not going to be able to work as hard. You're not going to enjoy the process. Whereas if you enjoy everything, you enjoy your teammates, all you guys are working hard, everyone wants to keep pushing each other to get better, that's when it becomes fun.
So being at a school like Georgia, where it's not just baseball that's good, obviously, great football program, other sports, obviously fantastic as well. Do the athletic departments all kind of work? And I don't mean work together. I just mean like, do you guys oftentimes cross paths where it's like this family?
Yeah, it does. I think especially at our place, it's all the athletics are kind of in one facility, right? And Coach Smart, his kid loves baseball, right? So he's kind of always over there. So it is a good thing, right? We try and help each other out however we can. Obviously, they're helping out because they're having great years and getting a lot of money for the school, right? But we all help each other, right? And it's kind of a cool cool working environment, right? To just to do that.
You know, I think about it. I've obviously seen over the last 25 years, like the pro level as an agent. How have you crafted your coaching from having been a professional player?
I've gotten a lot of it, honestly, from Wes the last couple of years, right? I think him being with the Twins and then a lot of my buddies that are coaching pro ball. My experience, obviously, you realize that it's a hard game and it's an individual game when you get to that level, right? I not necessarily did better with the team concept, but I really couldn't hit enough with a wood bat, right? So you don't play for very long. And you realize, man, it's a cutthroat business, right? Just like everywhere is these days. But I think some of the things that you learn is just the individual development, right? And I think, hey, it's how can you literally get as good as you can be so the player beside you is as good as they can be. And then you do that for the team concept, if that makes sense. I think improve yourself to help the team become better.
That is something that I do think gets lost, certainly in pro ball, quickly, right? You show up at, your first year and I mean, it's you can't avoid it. It's like, oh, we're all kind of, even though we're all on the same team, like you may be in high A or double A and like, yeah, your manager on some level wants to win.
Yeah,
of course, because he's trying to move his way up as well. And that's another interesting dynamic is all of the coaches, they're not content on just, if you're in high A, like they don't want to be a high A manager for their whole career.
That's not their end goal, right?
They're hoping they, go to double A next year, triple A the year after that, maybe go to the fall league.
Yeah.
And then get to the big leagues at some level on somebody's staff.
Yeah.
And so that is a weird
it's
dynamic at play.
For sure. Yeah.
Not to mention, I think one of the other things that these families, and I guess for every family listening, this is something that is important to know. Every organization at the next level is different, right? You're going to have, and I'm not talking, don't think about like the big league organizations. I mean, think about the whole organization from top to bottom. There are different resources, right? Some owners invest differently into their system. And I've always found it funny in pro ball, and this isn't a knock on pro ball, it's just a trend I've noticed, and it's starting to change, but from the nutrition side, right? You invest all of this money in the draft with these players. And, I would say when I started in this business, these guys would go to spring training or even the season. And it's like, all right, you get a bologna sandwich with one slice of bologna. You pick either a mustard or a mayonnaise packet, not both. And like you get this iceberg wedge salad with no nutrients. I mean, it's like a cafeteria in high school, right? So
it doesn't make sense.
No. And it makes you shake your head because the assumption would be, oh no, we're going to have access to the best. It doesn't matter if it's with the organization, that people dream about, like the Yankees, Dodgers, Cubs, et cetera, or if it's a different organization. But you assume that everybody from top to bottom, it's elite at every level, spare no expense. Not the case. It's obviously better now with, the minor league CBA, and now guys are getting paid for the housing and the meal plans are completely different now. But with college, you guys actually do have access, and I think maybe put more of a priority on the comfort. We want to make you guys feel comfortable, because if you're comfortable, then you're going to play better. If you have the food taken care of that you want, if you have a nice living environment, if we have a good clubhouse, if we're providing you guys with the resources, then naturally that's going to pull out, better ability, better talent, better performance. So yeah, it's gotten better, but I still think it's lacking at the pro level compared to, especially the SEC. I can't speak for other conferences because I think it's different.
Yeah, I think so. I think to your point, it's like we want them to focus. Obviously, you focus on school, you focus on nutrition, things like that, but we want to make it as easy as possible for them, right? Like if you're worried about, because again, like we said, we like to eat healthy, right? And I got super crazy with it a couple years ago, and it'll kind of consume your mind. But if my wife's a dietitian, if you've got her on the side,
that's why you're so healthy.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you've got her on the side, kind of saying, "Hey, just eat this. You don't have to think about it, or you don't have to think about your workout." Then your mind can focus on what it needs to focus on, right? And it's, hey, Friday nights in our league are really tough, and it's going to mentally drain you, right? So
it's like the Steve Jobs thing. Like Steve Jobs wore black turtlenecks, and his
Yeah.
explanation was like, it's one less thing to think
Yeah, you
about.
don't have to think about it, right? And if we have the resources and the manpower to do it, then we want to give the student athletes every chance they can
Yeah.
to succeed, right? And I think at the pro level and our level, right, it's a little bit of survival of the fittest, but we have our roster for this year, and it's like, hey, we got to get the most out of that roster, and it's not survival of the fittest. Like, okay, if these 10 guys don't make it, so what? It's no, we need everyone to rise to the top, right?
Yeah. So I want to give you some advice actually from the standpoint of like the player, because I just thought about this right now as I'm hearing. I like to think about kind of both ends of the spectrum. We have, from your perspective, what you find valuable with like the communication, how you would like it to go. What I will tell you, and this would be helpful, and I hope you find this valuable. I think one of the biggest challenges for these players is when you get these phone calls on August 1st and those conversations continue to happen. I think it's also important that you guys be transparent with the players.
Yeah.
And you guys have done a really good job of this. So this is by no means me telling you that, this is something you guys specifically, this is just college coaches in general. Mm-hmm. I think college coaches need to make sure as much as possible that you guys communicate with the players as far as what your expectation is too. And I actually think that'd be a valuable exercise in that initial conversation. The players never done it before, right? They've never had these conversations. And maybe you're not the very first phone call, but you're one of the first. We'll oftentimes talk to these families and these players and like give them an idea of like, this is what to expect. This is how it goes. But they're like not wanting to make a mistake. So they want the experience for you to be really positive in dealing with them. And so I'm sure when you're talking to them, you're like, you sense when they're nervous.
Yeah.
Right. And without saying it, but like guide them through how this is going to go, right? From your perspective. All right, listen, so we're going to have this initial phone call. I would love to stay in touch. Obviously, we're talking to other players and that doesn't diminish our interest in you. Or if it does, be transparent. But this is how I see it going is by this point, we would like to at least know, are we a place that you're considering? If the answer is yes, when can we get you out there?
Yeah.
Let's kind of take that next step and really start diving into like, this is something that we have interest in. Is it mutual? Because I think sometimes the players and the parents are like following your guys' lead. And when it's not communicated, they're like, I don't know if like, I'm not sure if they're interested. And so I, as an advisor, I'm like, hey, so how'd the conversation go? I think it went good. I'm like, okay, why do you think it went good? Well, because this is what they said. Okay, well, that sounds good. Yeah. What did he share with you? Kind of what the next steps are? No. Don't really know. I'm like, okay. And so I think sometimes it's this feeling out process where the coach feels like the player's going to tell me and the player thinks the coach is going to tell me. And so being somebody who's been through it before, I think it'd be super valuable if it's like, hey man, I'm just going to walk you through it. Like this is how it's going to go. All eyes open, because showing them what being transparent is like and being honest, I think is going to get you that honesty in return.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think too, sometimes it's like in our profession, we forget that the kid's going through it for the first time, right? You've made so many phone calls over the years that you're like, oh yeah, this is the next step, And again, to your point, if you just communicate it, it makes it easier and they're not surprised by anything or they're not wondering, oh man, he didn't call me today. Was he supposed to call me? What does that mean? Hey, he talked to this kid that I know. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So to your point, yeah, I think over communication is always better than under communication. But I think to your point, it's like sometimes we forget like this is his first phone call.
And I will say this too, if you're talking to a player who maybe isn't on the top of your list, I'm thinking kind of like a little further down. I'm like playing out this, not specific example, but I'm trying to create this in my head of, all right, you have a kid who, isn't like the number one kid at the position in the country. And so you reach out to him, but you're also reaching out to other players at the same position. You're not committing everybody. So you're really like, you've got your own pecking order in your mind of, well, it depends because if this guy wants to come, then that changes our situation with you. That's where I would honestly be transparent with, here's the reality. Because from a player's perspective, as they're dealing with you, what they want to know is, what is this going to be like if you are my coach, right? And if I can't get a straight answer on the front end, then it's very easy for somebody to assume, am I going to get a straight answer when I'm there? Right. And I know that there are some kids sometimes where it's like, yeah, I called and I texted the coach, and, a week ago they said to let him know when we're ready to, make these visits. I followed up twice. He hasn't called or texted me back. And I'm smart enough to know, well, that's not a good sign. Right. But instead of the kid wondering because the coach just isn't getting back to him, and then eventually 2 weeks later, like, hey, sorry about that, man. Yeah, we're full now. It's like, that's a bad look, right? And I've had players really think negatively of programs that I know to be great programs because they didn't follow up properly. It could have been that he was really busy in the middle of stuff. I have no idea. But the assumption from the player's standpoint was that's kind of brutal. Yeah. And so who do you think that kid talks to? This other player who also is talking to this school. And now it's I don't really like that coach. He never even had the courtesy of texting me back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and to your point, everyone kind of knows everybody, right? From the kids to the coaches to everything. And I think nowadays with the transfer portal, you just never know when someone's recruiting timeline might be up, right? So I think it is important, to your point, hey, you know what? This other guy committed. Hey, it's not looking like it. Best of luck to you. Maybe we'll see you down the road, but if you got something else going on, it'd probably be in your best interest to take it.
Well, I just feel like the kids, so the parents aren't super experienced in it unless they've had, Matt Holliday obviously had more experience than most, but most parents don't have the experience of going through it. So the kid being the one who, hey, it's his career, he's the one for the most part having the majority of the conversations. It would be so valuable for the kid to be I feel comfortable here. It doesn't mean I'm going there because they may have interest in another player more, but at least I know there's a mutual respect. He's not pulling a fast one on me and gonna, blow me off. And because then it's these guys are making decisions on, all right, what places am I going to go visit? Don't let them have your place in mind if that's not a place that you guys are actually going to be, accessible for him.
Well, and to your point too, I think sometimes kids get scared. Earlier in the conversation, I said, let me know if you're going somewhere else, right? I think some coaches will get mad at that, right? If they call and they're mad they didn't get the kid.
But this is an opportunity, honestly, if you do it the right way, where the family's going to be
he handled it the right way.
Yeah. Hey, that was very professional. Yeah. I appreciate that. It's actually interesting out of the draft this year. Look, I mean, we've talked to, we were very fortunate to represent some really good players. We've talked to players who chose to go in a different direction. And guess what I did? I texted them after the draft and I was like, hey, congratulations, man. I'm fired up for you guys. And I got 2 texts back from 2 of these families of some legit players. And they're like, hey, first class, really appreciate the fact that you reached out. No one else did. And it's and it's an easy text. And I genuinely am happy for them.
Yeah. It's not like you're trying to get them back or you think anything.
No,
it's
there's
just it's man, I'm happy for you.
Yeah. Good for you guys. I remember 2 years ago when this was a dream. And now it literally just happened. That's awesome. Go celebrate, Okay. As you're here at Area Codes, what is this whole thing like for you? When you're going to the field, what's it like? Are you just literally watching every single game?
Yeah. In these events, it's one field, right? So I can sit down with my iPad and kind of take notes on everything, right? Anything that I want, and kind of go back next week when I'm in the office, go back or really every night, but then next week go back through my notes and see what kind of stood out, what was different than I thought going in, right? Because I do the list before and kind of see where I'm at. And then after the tournament, who played good, what looked good, what didn't go good, things like that. So
what do you think parents get wrong about your job, college coach's job?
I mean, I think everyone thinks it's not necessarily easy, right? But just anyone on the outside of any job, you're oh, that should be.
You have a dream job, yeah.
Yeah, correct.
I could do that.
Yeah. And again, it's when you're in our league that we say, it's hey, you should be able to get these 10 players, right? And it's well, no, just we pick a certain, we have certain values or whatever. These 3 kids might have grown up and been a fan of a different school solely because their basketball team was good or this or that, or their parents went here, or they had a good experience here on a vacation. And it's we didn't really have a chance to recruit them, but people on the outside are oh, you should be able to get whoever you want, right? And I think me being in travel baseball, obviously when you're in it, you see the kids throughout the whole summer. You kind of know man, because when you're the parent, you get a little not angry, but there's a little jealousy, right? Like, hey, that kid over there, I know he's not good enough to go there. My kid should be going there, or this or that. But you know how it is being an agent. Like baseball is different than basketball and football. It's hard if you don't watch the kid every game in the summer. You really don't know what they are, right? I mean, you're hoping, you're projecting, you're thinking this, going based off what you've seen, but that's really all you can do. And obviously people go there, it's ups and downs, and it's not as easy as it looks, right?
No, and I was just gonna say, like, I interviewed Michael Garcia Parra, who runs GBG, who's obviously the scout with the Cardinals, and he was talking about it. Like, we had this same conversation where he goes, yeah, everybody thinks like there's this one way of thinking. It's like, we're all different organizations. We're all human beings too, like evaluating guys differently. He goes, I remember Keston Hura when he was at Irvine, like I would go to the game. He goes, I swear to you, I literally saw every single game that this guy got out. He didn't get out much that year, but it was like I was at every game that he got out. And so naturally his evaluation is going to look different than someone else who went to the field and like every time he was in the lineup, this guy's getting a homer, 4 for 4. And it's like, oh, this guy can't get out.
Yeah.
So naturally, I think, yeah, like, oh, you committed this guy? Like, what? You don't know enough. Or you're wrong. Like, what are you seeing? It's like, and my point to them all the time is, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. That's none of your business, right? Your journey and your son's journey is unique to him. And that's where, for me, it's take a step back, parents. Let the situation develop, right? There's a lot of time, even if your kid is draft eligible or going to be a senior, or going into his freshman year next year, it's 12 months. Like, there's still time left. Don't be so quick to, and I think it's the parents care so much. They want to see their son live out his dream, right? Whatever that looks like for them. And if they do, I mean, naturally every parent looks at their son and says, my son is different. My son is special. Right? Which is a good thing. But you also, and this is another thing Michael said, he goes, we're area scouts, so I'm seeing everybody in this area. I think the parents would think differently if they had the job of like a director or a national guy where you're seeing the whole country. There's a lot of players in the United States, right? When you're a right-handed high school pitcher, that's a big bucket.
Yeah.
Right? If you're just seeing kids in the area and he's the best kid in the area, it doesn't mean he's the best kid in the country. God willing, he might be, but it's not a guarantee. So like, that's where it's, if for some reason the interest level isn't what you would hope or expect, it's not a conspiracy. Like, they're not out to get them. There could be other things at play. That's why for me, I've always encouraged families as they go to these events, what are other people telling you about your son? Not what you believe about your son. What are they saying? Guys in the industry, right? College coaches, scouts. But like, what are they saying? And if everyone else is telling you that like this is different, your son is unique, yeah, okay, there's something there. But if they're not, it's not like everyone else is stupid, no one gets it. My son my son's better than this guy. Just go look at his statistics.
Yeah.
In this small high school program that isn't playing, the most elite talent. So, talk to me a little bit about like data, like, we're in a new world in baseball in general. And I look at the pro teams, obviously everybody, especially in the last like 10 years, has gone so data heavy. From a college perspective, is there too much data at some point for you? Like, and this is more generally, not like what does Georgia think, but like generally for college, is there too much data, or is it like, again, it's just information?
I think it's just information, right? I think you have to take it for what it's worth, right? And I think, everyone kind of values something different, and then everyone projects something different from it, right? So maybe you have a database where you're like, these big leaguers were this when they were 16. How do these guys match up, right? I think the more data points you can have, the better. But to your point, I think it's a fine mix, right? Of the data, what it looks like while he plays, all the old school stuff mixed with the new school stuff, but to your point, if a guy's swinging and missing a lot, hey, why is he swinging and missing? Or, if he's got this extension and he's getting a lot of swing and miss as a pitcher and he's doing this, then hey, these are good characteristics, right? They kind of just more reassure you than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, last two questions. The first of which is there a player that you think about that went to Georgia and you're like, I am so proud that this guy, and maybe it's a guy, I feel like I know who it is, but it's a guy who it wasn't a guarantee for him. He had to come in and he had to work his tail off. Not that it's ever a guarantee. But if you look, a year before, 2 years before, like it could have gone either way. He stuck with the plan. He stuck with the program. He stuck with, what you guys were preaching and coaching. And then look what happened. Is there a guy that stands out as like?
Yeah, it'd be Charlie Condon.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I'm sure all these families are like, oh yeah, Charlie Condon. Yeah, really high draft pick. I understand he was really good. But like, I don't think many people know this guy wasn't considered that the year before. Right. So like share a little bit of that story.
Yeah, he came in and it was kind of during the COVID time where he kind of got under recruited, right? But I think he was going to a D3 to play football and baseball. And, he just wanted to come to Georgia. And again, times have changed from even then, right? The roster limits, walk-ons, things like that. But he came to Georgia and walked on. And then he wasn't able to make the team his first year just because of how many guys we had on scholarship coming back. Some weird nuances like that. So he went out and played in the Northwoods League. And funny story is I called a couple of guys in the Northwoods and I was like, hey, take this guy. And they're like, nah, he's redshirted. We don't really have room for a corner guy that's redshirted. Probably like the fourth coach took him. I'm like, listen, he's going to be in the middle of our order next year. Like he's a real player. And he took him, and obviously he was the Northwoods MVP and came back and had a great year for us. But
how many homers did he hit?
His draft year, he hit 37.
37
homers. Yeah. So, and again, he wasn't on the roster his first year. I remember throwing BP to him before a team could practice because he couldn't practice with the team. And he was just an awesome kid, right? And I think his work ethic, his parents came to BP to watch him hit.
Well, so I guess here's my question. Was it something that, like, obviously you saw something in him, right? Like you guys saw something in him. But was it a matter of like, oh, he just needed reps, he needed an opportunity, or was it like, no, there was some holes in his swing, he had to like work on something specific, and he did?
I think the first year he just needed reps, right? And we went out to Northwoods, got a lot of reps, came back, was a really good player. And I think his junior year, he really honed in on his swing through video and things like that. And then his plate discipline got a lot better. Yeah. I think that was one of the things that really skyrocketed him up draft boards and gave him the opportunity to be the player he is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I love stories like this too, because I think I'm a big underdog guy. I just love the stories when there was a player who had some adversity early. He had to prove people wrong. People doubted him. Like the guy that comes to mind, obviously I'm biased because I went to Long Beach, but like Evan Longoria, right? Like Evan Longoria, wasn't drafted out of high school, goes to a junior college, does well, gets a scholarship to Long Beach State, is the third overall, pick in the draft. Now, that wasn't a slam dunk. He had to put a lot of work in. He's obviously a talented guy. I mean, look at his career in the big leagues. But that was somebody who, you're not going to turn that guy away in high school. Like that kid was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like that's the only way that goes this way. Right. So I think of Charlie, I've actually talked to him before. This was, before the draft, obviously. And the thing that stuck out to me is super respectful, great family, great communicator. Yeah. There was zero question of like, is this guy going to like put in the work?
Yeah.
And so seeing that his career has panned out the way that it has out of the draft and, that whole thing shaken out. I mean, he won the Golden Spikes, I believe, right? So like, yeah, I mean, like what a great story. So that's where I kind of expected that, but I don't know. Maybe there was somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. If you could change one thing about college recruiting, what would it be? And how would that change benefit both the college and the player?
I think I would change it to when a guy commits, he's actually signed with the school. So there's not as much, not necessarily wiggle room, but you feel like there's a little more from the kid and the school's perspective of, hey, this guy's committed, this guy's signed. I don't know how you would do it or what it is, but
that's beside the point.
Yeah,
I think the point is taken, which is, I mean, I can understand why from a college that is certainly real. I think sometimes from players, they probably would say the same thing because it would have to work both ways. Like, yeah, if you commit a kid, there's no, hey man, like it's not going to work out here. And that's tricky too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it would slow everyone down a little bit. Right.
Yeah. Which is what I believe the whole August 1st thing has done.
It's done it pretty well. Yeah. Which has been a good thing.
Yeah. All right. I lied. I have one more question. Yeah. Okay. So when you have a kid who's in high school, who's like a draft follow for teams, and this kid is now being projected to be taken in the draft. I think one of the biggest frustrations I imagine for you guys is this inability to communicate and figure out, not that you can tell them 100%, meaning the player can tell you 100%, like I'm signing or I'm not signing, because it depends a lot of the times.
Yeah.
What is a message that you would want to tell the family and the player about what would be helpful from your perspective? I think I know what the answer would be if it was me in your shoes, but I'm curious to hear from you because I want to give these families and these players. I don't think any family or player ever wants to mislead a coach or not be honest. They're obviously really nervous and like don't want to, speak out of turn or mess up something. But what would be helpful for you to?
Yeah, I think you kind of led into it. Honest and transparent, right? I think, the draft, to be drafted out of high school and to have that opportunity is awesome, right? And I think not too many people, but guys just try and talk people out of the draft. College guys, right? Talk them out of the draft just because they want them selfishly for them. But each kid's story is just so different. You never really know, right? But I think just being transparent and again, to your point, like even the scouts don't know really if, hey, that we're going to give this guy this number or whatever this number might be. And sometimes the kids don't know, because again, I was drafted. I know what it's like. Like you don't know when it really gets to draft day, if that number is going to change. Obviously, that's why you're involved to help the kid through that process. But you know how it is. You've always seen the kid that, hey, I'm going to sign for $1 million and it gets to draft day and he's like, man, I really just want to go play. It's cool for my friends to see me get drafted. I'm signing for $350, or whatever it may be. I think just the transparency on that end.
That makes sense because you guys have to make decisions too.
Yeah.
Right. And you're counting on, not that it's 100% guaranteed that the kid is coming to school.
It's not black and white, right? It's not a yes or a no. Like you don't know how the draft's going to go because you're more involved with that than I am, but you know how it is. And it changes every second.
Yeah. And I do think one of the things that would be helpful for the families, for you guys to convey is really like something very specific and honest, which is you're going to know the kid's talent level. And like, if you were to tell a kid he's okay, if you sign for anything less than $3 million, you're nuts. Like, come on, man. But it's being honest. Like, look, if you get what you want, man, more power to you. Like, we're going to be rooting for you. We're happy for you. But just like, we just want to know that you're just not going to absolutely pull the ripcord. And yeah, it's like, just take me and I'll sign for whatever you offer, because that's something I struggle with too. And what's one of the reasons why I spend so much time really trying to assure, the families, like, when you make this decision, if the first time we're thinking about this is going through the draft, it's way too late. Because this is such an emotional thing. You can't make this decision for the first time in 15 seconds saying like, okay, yes, I'll take this or no. And I know that a lot of the kids, and if you're listening, kids, don't go through this journey and say like, it's a hard thing to think about. So like, I don't want to deal with it. I'll deal with it then. Not a good path. But also don't just think about best case scenario. It's easy to think about best case scenario. Oh, best case. Would I sign for $5 million? Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Good job. Would you sign for 2? Right? I don't know. And so that's what I mean. Like when they get to a place where like, I don't know. And then they realize, oh, this doesn't feel good. I don't really want to think about this. That's what you have to think about. Because if that happens, you need to know immediately, this is my answer. I'm committed to it, whatever. And I've said to families, go through the draft process, buying into this belief that you're going to college. Because if you don't, it's because some team just gave you life-changing money and bought you out of that opportunity and you're fired up. And if you think from that perspective and you end up on campus, you're excited. It's what I always thought it was going to happen, right? The opposite oftentimes happens though, which is I'm signing, man. I just know I'm ranked on all these boards. They have me in the top 100. This is happening. I don't even got to worry about it. I'm not going to college. I'm not going to need to. And then sure enough, now it's the 11th round and you're banking on a team saving money and overpaying you later. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I haven't even thought about going to college. And those are the guys that are like, fine, I'll just sign. They sign and they're pissed. And so it's like, why were you ever looking at college as though it was a bad opportunity?
Yeah, because the worst thing, to your point, is like you show up at college and you're disappointed to be there after not signing.
For what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right? Especially in the SEC at a good program like yours.
Yeah.
What? How is that being misconstrued? So, and again, that's why I always say it just comes back to communication and relationships.
Yep.
You know?
That's it.
Brother, I appreciate you coming on, man.
No, thanks for having me.
This
It was fun. Yeah.
All right, bud.